Hi everyone, it's TTL back with another video for you, and today it's 3070 time. Now I know straight away a lot of you are going to be worried or saying, well, are we actually going to be able to buy them? Now I did ask Nvidia and they didn't want to say, but I have spoken to some vendors. Now the aftermarket cards, the vendor cards, are coming out a couple of days later. This video first went live on the 27th of October. The vendor cards are coming out on the 29th of October, and they have told me they have multiples of the cards, and by that I mean more than they had last time. So if they had 100 last time, they've got multiples of that 100 this time. I'm not actually allowed to say the exact numbers, but at the end of the day, there are going to be more of them available. And that could be good. It's going to depend on the demand, because obviously the demand for the 3080 outstripped the availability of the 3080. Now I happen to know that one specific brand in the UK had 500 of these cards available on launch day. They have actually sent out many more than that 500 since launch day. So the original 500 went out and they've sent out many more than that 500 since. So the fact that there's people are still struggling to get them does go to show you quite how many of these have been sold. It's a little bit insane. But the 3070 is going to come in at a much more aggressive price point. So in the UK, looking at about £475 for this, or $499. So the fact that it's coming in considerably cheaper actually then could mean that they're going to need more of them. Also, we're being touted, or have been touted and teased, with 2080 Ti like performance for this around £500 price. Now, a few months ago, a 2080 Ti, as everyone would have known, would have cost you more than £1,000. So less than half the price, roughly the same sort of performance, but can it live up to those lofty claims? Now, one of the things I will do is show you around the card. Now, it is beautifully made, just like the 3080. The lines on the back, with the back plate and the top, the main body of the card, all line up lovely. I actually prefer the cutout on the 3070 on the back, where the one of the fans can blow through, because it does have two fans underneath, whereas the 3080 only had that single. And the engineering and craftsmanship that went into manufacturing, designing and putting together this card is amazing, and it's only yet again ruined by that cable that they send it with for the mini plug. Now the extension cable stroke adapter only needs a single 8-pin PCI Express on this one, and that in itself says a lot, because a single 8-pin, most of the 2080 Ti's with dual 8-pins, but a single 8-pin power connector. But I would say if you like aesthetics at all, then you buy one of these ones, because it's not going to matter with the aftermarket cards, but if you buy a Founders, then Corsair are going to be bringing out a replacement cable for their power supplies, and Cable Mod have started listing the adapter cable for their cable kit, so you can add it into a cable kit, and they've got adapters as well. And to be fair, I think if you're going to put something this good looking in your system, I think you should do it, because whoever at Nvidia decided that those cables were a good idea, they are terrible. They let the card down. They let everything down. It's like an afterthought. It's like an intern did it or something. Now anyway, we have said single 8-pin. Now it uses 371 watts in total, which does put it below the 2080 Ti by a fairly decent margin. And it puts it quite well in, anyway, 371 watts. You can see it in the graphs. The little cooler does really well as well. 71 degrees when left on auto. Didn't do anything with it. All of the case fans were set to 1200 RPM. The cooler itself works very well. Whizzing on, clock speeds, and I am trying to get this through quite quickly, because at the end of the day, it's a great little card, and there's just a couple of little things that I need to tell you about it, if I'm completely honest. Clock speeds, 1725 boost, but then the Nvidia overclocking and everything kicks in, and a maximum was seen of 2010 megahertz. Over a 30-minute run of Unigine, it actually averaged out about 1927 megahertz. So fairly decent numbers. Normally the lower end cards seem to go that little bit higher, but this one didn't architecture differences, but nevertheless, this was completely run out of the box. So it does your overclocking for you, but it does that with all of the other ones as well. Now, when it comes to games and gameplay, it actually seems to swing in two very easily kind of understood branches. If it's a new game, like Control, for example, or any number of the newer games that are going to be coming out, so Control's got the new DLSS and it's got very well implemented ray tracing, then the 3070 performs better than the 2080 Ti. Could be drivers, who knows, probably is. But if it's older games, like The Witcher, or I've got Gears here to show you today, but I do need to be very, very clear that there are so many more games on the OC3D website. If you'd like to go and have a look, pick through the graphs, see the full graph, see how they compare to other graphics cards as well. But older games, it sits just below the 2080 Ti. And I did seem to notice that there or thereabouts, it was just a bit below with synthetics as well. So it's definitely favouring the newer game titles. But one of the things I will say is what you may not have picked up on with Control is how good DLSS works. So I'm not saying that you should play this at 4K, but if you had ray tracing on in 4K with this card, it was unplayable, like absolutely unplayable. It made me feel poorly. But then if you flick DLSS on, suddenly you had 45 frames, which isn't a huge amount of frames, but don't forget it's a 3070, and Control is an absolute resource hog. But it made it go from unplayable to perfectly playable frames. I personally think that this card is an absolute cracker 1440p card, because you do need to remember it's only got 8GB of VRAM. So with some of the massive titles, even like Resident Evil, for example, with everything turned up to the hilt, you can get to the limit of that 8GB, which is something you're going to need to think about at home. I, like I said, personally think that the smaller size does kind of make it feel like it's a much lower end card, but there is a lot of power going on underneath the hood, especially for the money. It's where graphics cards should have been for the last 2 or 3 years, but we're kind of back at a semi-sensible amount of performance. But the other thing is I hadn't shown you that compared to the 3080, it is actually a fair bit smaller, which means with a normal ATX or MATX motherboard sort of size case, you're not going to run into any problems. It's going to overhang an ITX board a little bit, but it's going to be much better suited for those of you out there that want to run a smaller build, maybe for LANs if we ever get to do them again or anything like that. But the point is, there's an awful lot going, performance getting chucked out of that card for the price and again for the size, because the other sort of thing that you do need to remember is that is where the PCB is. Where my hand is just plain air, there's nothing there. So it's a tiny, tiny little card that does chuck out a lot of frames per second. So DLSS is definitely something that you should be thinking about no matter what resolution that you're going to be playing, because it's either going to get you a decent bump in FPS because you've turned all the things up, or it could actually make certain games a significant amount more playable if you're turning the resolution up. I do think the sweet spot with it is 1440p, but I said the same with the 2080 Ti. And I personally think that the 1440p is a more sensible kind of point for most of us to be heading as well, because the step up then. Anyway, we're doing a review 4K versus 1440p now, and I wanted to keep this one short and sweet because that is what the card is. It's short and sweet. So you may all be thinking to me now about other things that are coming out in October. I've reviewed this card based on the information that I absolutely positively have today in the graphs. So I'm not going to be doing any speculation, and I think that's fair because I wouldn't have done it. It would have been unfair to have done it the other way around, so I've not done it this way around either. And as it stands today, for 500 quid, this is an absolute cracking little card, and I actually look forward to see what the vendors manage to do to it and if they can actually best the performance that this one delivers. You'll find out in a couple of days. So good thermals, low noise, pretty much didn't hear the card, great performance, and when you kind of consider that they wanted us to compare this to the 2070, It's there or thereabouts, 2080 Ti for less than half the money of what the card was available for just a couple of 2 or 3 months ago. So an absolutely cracking little card, and I would say this is actually going to be the one that's going to sell significantly amounts more than this one, because it's more accessible to the bulk of us, and it's probably going to be the one that a lot of us are going to aspire to be getting our hands on. So let's hope that the rumours I've heard of them having more of them are going to be better. But at the end of the day, it's going to be supply versus demand. And it is a cracking card for the money, especially compared to the 2080 Ti. So if you all now are like, panic, I have to have one, maybe it will outstrip demand. Only time is going to tell. But I have thoroughly enjoyed working with this. In a couple of days' time, from the time that I'm making it, we're going to have the aftermarket cards as well. So I have more of these to come for you. There or thereabouts this sort of price as well, which should be kind of interesting. But for now at least, this is the tiniest one with another video for you out. Ding! Love you, sis.